It is now time for the panel, so our panelists, come on up and join me. So moderating the panel today, I'll turn on this. So moderating the panel today is Andrew Blustein, who is a reporter at The Drum, who covers such things as advanced TV, programmatic, media, and the like. And so I'm going to turn it over to Andrew to introduce the topic and the panelists. Andrew.
So I'm Andrew. I've been at The Drum since about September. However many months that is. I write words. I don't really do math. So a lot of what I cover is media. I just came out of the upfronts world, so TV is definitely on my mind, especially streaming, CTV, OTT, any other acronym you could think of. So that's what we talked about today, how the whole TV world is like totally different and it's going to keep changing. So I will let everybody introduce themselves. I guess we can start right here and go down the line.
Okay, my name is Mark Hudson. I'm head of media intelligence at TVSquared. A TV attribution company, basically a math company as described by our uppers, and based in Edinburgh, Scotland. We've got about, I think, we're active in 70 countries doing television attribution, and we have over 1,000 clients. And our main purpose is to help them spend and allocate their media dollars correctly amongst the TV landscape.
I'm Melissa Hutter. I'm the Director of Measurement Strategy at Comcast Spotlight, which is the advertising division at Comcast. And I focus on building out attribution and measurement capabilities for all of our advertisers across all lines of business, including local, regional, and national.
Hi everyone, I'm Scott Grunther. I head up the media analytics practice at EDO. What about EDO? We are a data and analytics company that has brought sort of these down funnel behavioral metrics, typically reserved for digital and direct marketers, to big brand advertisers on linear TV by linking at huge scale online behavioral activity, search data, to minute-by-minute linear TV ad airings, and have been built a pretty big database from which we provide insights and analytics both to the buy side of the business, marketers and their agencies, as well as TV ad sellers, namely the TV networks.
Great. So I guess we'll start by just what you're seeing right now in the TV world. So much disruption going on. Like I said, I was at upfronts. Everyone's talking about streaming these days. So what are you seeing from like a consumer perspective, a marketer perspective? How are things changing? I guess you could say at the end of
What are we seeing in the marketplace?
Yeah.
I mean, listen, with the upfronts this week, if anyone was paying attention, obviously there's a much bigger push towards data, right? If you saw, I just saw some numbers. Someone showed me that actually the number of new shows that the broadcast networks are launching is down. But interestingly, the amount of money that's being spent in the upfront is not just stable but up. $20 billion spent in the upfront. The broadcast TV upfront this year. But what I think the big thing that I've seen, and a big part of what EDO is doing to help work with those networks as clients, is helping them make sense of the data that's at their disposal and empowering them and enabling them, and the networks realize that they need to sell beyond just age, gender demos. So there's a lot that you see in terms of guaranteeing performance, guaranteeing down funnel metrics, guaranteeing ROI, and measuring improving ROI, because let's face it, it's a fragmented world, and they can't just rest on their laurels and sell the way that they always have. And I think you saw that at all the upfronts. I think the big thing is the influence and impact of data in the sales and buying processes.
Yeah, I would say there's a lot of buzz out there, and there's a lot of headlines that say that television is dead. That's not true. People watch, we see over 4.5 hours of TV a day. It's just the way that they're consuming content is changing. It's not only on the linear space, but it's on all types of devices, streaming, over the top, all those buzzwords, on your mobile, whatever it may be. But now we have, on the Spotlight side, what we're doing is we're really tapping into our viewership data in an anonymized way. so that we can really understand and use data, as Scott was saying. It's really important to understand how people are consuming content and how do you use that data to help advertisers better to target and reach their audiences. So data is key, but there's also a lot of data in the linear space, and we're creating more digital-like tactics in the television world that we're bringing to our class.
You know, you guys stole my thunder. Data is really key. It's the overabundance of data and the non-harmonious nature of it at this point. You have a lot of emergent technologies that don't have standardized data practices. So you don't see the same measures across different vendors. Linear TV is a very mature space. Since at least 1947. In the mid-50s, it really got up to pace where we were talking about exposure metrics. Everything was how many eyeballs did I capture? We're looking into a space now that we have a two-way data path that people can tell us what they're interested in. That kind of data is hyper useful, and you have to understand the balance between exposure and activity, lean forward activity besides passive activity.
We could just like dive right into the data talk then. What are these key data metrics that you need? Like, can you, are they the same on linear versus on digital? Like, what kind of data points are you talking about?
You know, linear has always been exposure-based. Basically, it's the measure by which networks, everybody sells their media. It's how you gauge how much you can charge for something. It's how many eyeballs I got in front of for a very wide age and gender demo. What we're seeing now is that with the digital activity that you can couple with the exposure data, you can get a lot deeper into that. You can dissect down to microsegments. You can get down to who's bought an Audi or who's in the market for an Audi in the next 6 months and target them on specific media with specific messages. KPIs can be anything, and measures can be anything beyond simple how many people watched, how many people responded. It could be, you know, econometrics measures based upon how you did in other media mix modeling. It runs the gamut. There's so much data out there.
And then when we were talking about this earlier, how you can bring all that to linear TV, right? You can bring this promise of addressability into the linear world.
Yeah, so we can use, as I was saying before, our viewership data to really understand what audiences are watching, and we can layer that with third-party segments. So whether you're in market for a car, whether you are a quick-serve restaurant frequenter, whatever that may be, so that we can use that for targeting purposes and building out better ways to reach our audience in the linear space. So what are the top networks that your consumer is watching, and how do you best reach them? So television is no longer just an upper funnel brand awareness, it's full funnel. So how do you use television to create a full funnel solution, reach people mid to lower funnel, and use the data to help optimize and actually deliver and measure that performance?
So then how are you supposed to do that across all of these different platforms, linear, CTV, OTT? Like, what is the marketing mix
That's the
they look like?
That's really where it's at right now. Everybody's still trying to figure it out, and I think a lot of the non-linear video opportunities, people have either jumped into the space heavy and invested heavily. Our recommendation from where I come from is that you should test and go into that with a mindset of it's a learning experience, because it's still evolving. The metrics are still evolving and getting codified. The best thing to do is to not go in whole hog and throw your entire budget into advanced technology just yet. You know, things are changing very rapidly. This is not your 1970s TV.
Yeah.
Do you have a question?
I just had a quick, so you say test, what does that mean
It means-
volume-wise? Like, what are you?
It means different things to different advertisers. You could have a very large advertiser, P&G, largest advertiser on the planet, could devote a great deal of money to
So it's
that.
money-based?
Yeah, it's budgetary based. It's proportional to how much you would spend on your entire video budget. But think of it as how consumers look at video, is that they're pretty much agnostic, and that's how we approach it. If it's video, we're looking at it, and we're trying to measure it the same. Whether it ends up on your cell phone, it's on your TV, it's on a tablet. Anything that can deliver video to most consumers today coming up who didn't know when cable first came around, they're looking at their tablets and thinking, I can watch Amazon on the tablet, I can watch it on the computer, I can watch it on the TV, I can watch it anywhere, I can watch it on the airplane. on the seat back. It's seamless to them. And we like it to be that way, but different forums and different mediums demand sometimes a different message. And you have a different audience watching at different times in different ways.
Yeah. I mean, I'll just say, as direct marketers, I mean, this world that you guys are playing in, I mean, what's been very unique about this business is that direct marketers own their funnels, right? They buy TV, they know it works, you're able to track that. And that's a very powerful thing, right? And I think linear TV has historically not been able to do that. But technology and different data sources and streams have really empowered a new wave. I mean, like I said, I mean, at our company at EDO, I mean, like I said, we are working with brands. We're working with ad sellers to basically say that there is a way to use things like search, right? What is that moment that someone's watching a TV ad and they take an immediate action? Right? What is the first thing that they can do? They're going to pick up their phone and they're going to Google it. So what we've done is, like, whether it's searching for a brand or a product or a movie or whatever it may be, I mean, there are ways now, and you capture that at scale and you apply data science and you could actually say that this particular ad drove this amount of search engagement for a particular brand or product. That's really powerful if you can do that at scale. You can do that always on. You can create a huge syndicated data set. What that does is it kind of levels the playing field for brand advertisers to hold the ad sellers much more accountable for kind of selling, for kind of proving performance beyond just, did this reach age, gender, demo traditionally. And it just gives them the insights to optimize, we talked about that, optimizing your creative, optimizing your media placements in a way that you just have not had the insights, the data, the analytics to do that with any effect. And I do think, like I said, this way of DTC marketing being more broadly applied to traditional advertising, particularly linear TV, is a new world. And that's not just, we talk about the funnel, it's not just attribution at the bottom of the funnel. I mean, there are things like engagement, it could be attention. There's all sorts of ways to capture this through different data sources.
Yeah, we were saying this a bit, like talking about results. One of the upfronts I was at, they say, like, now we can guarantee results. I'm just sitting there, like, well, shouldn't you have always been able to guarantee results? So, I mean, obviously, like, things change. You're saying, like, you can hold people to much more account now, and there's just so much data out there.
It's kind of tough holding people to results because I worked on a couple of car accounts in my time. And it was always sales coupled with an exposure to TV ad. There's a gap of time there that people are doing their shopping, and we were looking at television and other mediums that were hitting the consumer on a case-by-case basis. We were trying to capture information after the fact, and it left out that immediate impact of one specific media, specifically television. And it muddied the waters. And so there was too much time in between point A and point Z to understand, what was the real impact? What was the real return on investment? How did that drive that particular sale? And what proportion did it? TV can sometimes be 10% of what drove somebody to buy something. It could be 100%. It all is a matter of getting the facts straight, understanding what kind of data. Didn't really have that two-way data stream before. You didn't have that immediate impact and immediate knowledge of why people were searching, what they were searching for, what apps they were downloading, what phone numbers they were calling. And it was very siloed information, so it's kind of tough.
Yeah, I think it's important to understand what your campaign goals or your KPIs are from the onset and know what you're getting from the publishers and the vendors that you're working with to align with those. But also, don't blame a publisher for 100% if it doesn't work. So for example, in the auto space, a TV ad can get someone to potentially go to a dealership, but maybe they don't convert because they didn't have the inventory in stock or they didn't like the salesperson that was there. So TV did what it was supposed to do, but there's other factors in there that you should never lose sight of. And just know that how TV and other mediums influence behavior, but don't blame them for everything.
Is there any way to, like, account for that, or you just gotta keep that in mind?
Well, I mean, I think that goes to, again, there's other metrics beyond, I mean, again, the ultimate sale, of course, is the goal. There's a lot that goes on, to Melissa's point, between someone seeing an ad and buying it. So, yeah, there's different KPIs to kind of get there, but you know, if you kind of believe that people taking an action, searching, or tweeting, or socializing, or whatever it may be, to Melissa's point, I mean, TV, what we're trying to do with working with a lot of the TV players and big brands is to say that, again, Google and Facebook and the like should not be getting all the credit for driving people to sale, just because that's easier to track a lot of those transactions. That for big brand marketers, that there are other ways to kind of say, no, you know, Melissa said it well, you did your job in driving people down through that funnel, and we spend a lot of time at EDO working with the networks, as well as with the brands, to kind of help validate and prove just, you know, that you did your job moving them down the funnel. After that, there's a lot of factors that are outside of your control.
So it sounds like we were kind of dancing around it. Measurement is then like the big issue. So is there like a measurement standard? Like, how do we get there? What do you need to see?
I think each company has a different, slightly different approach, and we look at things in TVSquared in a deterministic versus fatalist or probabilistic model. Deterministic is when you have a group of people gathered that are representative of the general population. You watch them and you track what they do and you project that out to the total pop and you estimate how many people are out there doing what they're doing. So probabilistic catches people as they arrive at a website, at a space, or they make a phone call, and works backwards from there. They both work towards the middle, and neither one of them is a perfect solution. So when you have a bunch of people as a, you know, kind of bunch of rats in a maze to watch, you can get a lot of information previous to that. You have very deep information, whereas going from the end point, working towards the middle, you have to start building a personality. There's a lot of data points that one can get from different tactics, and it's probably best to have a blend of every single aspect of collecting data to put it all together in the end. There's no one be-all, fits-all solution, and there's a lot of privacy concerns. That's a huge, huge issue. Not as much now as it was 10, 15 years ago. People are a little bit freer to, you know, distribute their digital fingerprints all over the place, trade that for convenience. Well, we're more interested in the information. We don't want to know who you are, we want to know what you are.
Keep on like that measurement talk, like who, I mean, it was Nielsen, it still kind of is, but is there like a new Nielsen for this OTT world? What is there, like, can there be an industry standard in this place, or is it just everybody relies on their own data?
I mean, I can say, listen, you've got the guys that have been the traditional measurement players, measuring eyeballs and viewership, and it's Nielsen, it's ComScore. I mean, those are the big guys. I always sort of like, one taking a digital first approach, the other's taking a TV first approach, and they're just kind of racing to the middle, and it's a challenge. I mean, everyone's looking for the holy grail, and everyone is working on ways to capture true cross-media, all-platform, you know, measurement and metrics. It's something this industry's been talking about forever. I do think, but the question of, are there metrics that are beyond eyeballs and moving further down the funnel that can be standardized in a certain way? They don't have to be, but, you know, can they be syndicated in a certain way where everyone's working with the same metrics? Yeah, I mean, there are. You know, I can speak from my company's experience. I mean, we're working with a big network group right now to be one of those metrics that they can apply into their ad sales process for what they're calling advanced, you know, audience targeting, right? So they're basically, what they're doing is each program has a certain concentration of an audience, and they can work, and there's a lot of data that goes into kind of fueling those profiles, and they can then sell a package to an advertiser that meets a very specific audience target based on psychographics or behavioral data beyond just, you know, this is, you know, men 25 to 54 can mean a lot of different things, and certainly not a catch-all. So getting that behavioral, that psychographic, that type of data to enable them to target. So they do that. Where we come in is, once they kind of sell that package, is being able to track, well, how did that target audience perform in driving search behavior, online behavior for the brand being advertised compared to when they don't, right? Or compared to some normative benchmark. And what happens then is they are now, they found that the data is so sort of predictive and stable, they are actually guaranteeing on that as a secondary guarantee. So it's just an example. Like they're saying, like, you know, if you spend this money with us in this advanced targeting initiative, we will, you know, guarantee X, that you will get X% lift in search engagement for your campaign. And then it's up to them to kind of navigate or negotiate what exactly that means, what they're giving up or not. But they're certainly asking and getting pricing premiums for that advanced targeting. So that's an example of like one metric. There are others. Certainly, you know, in the attribution space, there's a lot. All the networks now are now getting involved with the TVSquared and other data plus math and other attribution folks that are doing more for either down funnel, you know, ROI type performance metrics. But is there a standard? I mean, you know, you're always going to want to start with how many people are watching, who are they, but then what are they actually doing, what behaviors are they taking, and what impact is the TV campaign or any media campaign having on that?
Like from Comcast perspective, you have like direct insights into all of it. So where do you guys fit in like in this whole measurement world?
Yeah, so we really are focusing on the full funnel. So from upper funnel awareness, as I mentioned, it's about how do you increase the reach among your target audience. So what we like to say is the best way to buy us is to buy broad and deep. So what that means is buying very broad across all day parts. We have a lot of advertisers that only want to be in prime time because they think that's where all the eyeballs are, and they only want to be in top 5 networks. We also work with a lot of local advertisers who say, well, I only want to put my ad in HGTV because that's what my wife watches and I want her to see me on TV. It's true, it happens in all categories all the time. But really what we're encouraging is the best way to maximize your reach is not just be in just those top networks or cherry picking what you want to advertise in. If you run across 40 networks, you can increase your household reach. So what we say is maybe you don't want to make those drastic shifts, but let's test and learn with us. So if you're buying 10 networks now, let's increase that to 15. If you're only buying prime time, what happens if you shift some of those dollars towards other day parts and using website attribution or location or whatever it may be? Let's see what happens and how those metrics improve over time as you make those changes. So that's really how we're working on it and building out the capabilities to do that.
I feel like there really needs to be like a real re-education in the marketplace because like all the tools and technologies are basically out there. You just kind of have to know how to use them. You need to know like what exactly is premium content, what am I buying. So like, what do marketers need to know now? Like how are agency relationships changing? Like is there a re-education really going on?
Agencies are always in flux. I've worked for 4 of them so far. Not anticipating what we're working for anymore, but agencies really have to invest in understanding the data that they have and how they use it. A lot of them are very, very forward in this. There's a lot of vendors out there that can supply ready-made canned information. There's other specialized companies that are best left outside the agency. So the agency doesn't grade its own work. That's a major problem, where you have agencies and in some cases media vendors delivering their own metrics. You know, transparency's been a big issue with agencies. You know, going to outside vendors that are verified and people that are trustworthy, have a verified methodology, delivering the right information to them is hyper important. So any agency forward stance would be one that's looking towards the best possible solution, whether it's in-house or shopped out. There's just so much data. And agencies like to keep their own data onto themselves. A lot of clients are so, I can't even come up with a term, so restrictive with their data. Walmart, for example, we worked with Walmart. It was the most interesting thing to do because Walmart wouldn't give you any of the data. We were their advertising agency. You won't tell Mr. Sid's data. You know, there are certain walls that need to be not necessarily broken down, but understood. If there is a ridiculous brick wall between you and the data, you have to find some way around it. And these are just the realities of business now. It's client by client, agency by agency. Every agency has a different personality, and some of them are weird. Some of them are fun to work with, most of them are very open to speaking about how to improve their return on investment, and because they all want more money. And this is really about optimizing where their money's going, keeping their clients happy, keeping their clients stable, getting more business in the door. We help them with that. I don't think we're doing a bad thing. We put the information in their hands and they do with it what they will. We can advise them. But, it's a strange world out there.
I think, somebody see the pendulum swing between brands and agencies as coming from the data and analytics side. And it does, I think, change, and it is very much fluid, and I definitely see differences category by category in terms of the role of the agency. For example, I think automotive is an industry where the agency still plays a very influential role as partners to some of the biggest auto brands in the world, where it's like they can't even make a move without talking to their agency, who's been their media buying firm for however long. And that the agency is going to be the one who's really going to be running point with the data partner or provider. Whereas there's other ones where, to your point, the brand is not just going to want to defer, because they realize the importance of analytics and insights and data. They've invested to have the right people in-house to kind of understand it and process it. And they don't want to just be, they don't necessarily trust the agency to tell them the good, the bad, and the ugly, because that may be, a sign of work that they did not do that well. And they also don't want to just rely, a lot of times, when these big media deals are being cut, there are, reports that are sort of promised or guaranteed as part of a big media buy that will come back to the agency or to the brand, and that's always going to be skewed, because the ad seller is always going to tell you how terrific everything did. They're not going to tell you could have done this better or that better. They're going to say this was unbelievable, the greatest thing ever. But I do think I always feel that the magic kind of happens when you have, again, as a data provider and partner, when the brand and agency, both media and creative, are at the table together. That it is a trusted relationship. It is transparent, and at the end of the day, we love working with brands direct, because they're the ones who are gonna listen. They are the end client, and when you're talking to them direct, and they're the ones signing the checks and paying the bills for insights, that's always I think a good thing, but always good to also have the agencies actively involved in that process.
Yeah, and I think it's also about talking to the agencies and getting them to exposure, just at the high level, but all the way down to the planners too, because they're actually, at the end of the day, still transacting a lot of the times on GRPs and TRPs, and if we're moving away from that to more audience-based metrics, we need to get them to shift ultimately the way that they're going to end up transacting, and maybe we didn't hit certain goals, but there's actually more value there, and we can prove that to you in different ways. So it's about getting it throughout the entire funnel.
Yeah, just talking about advanced TV, it just sounds like only a good thing, really, all this targetability and addressability, but are there any missteps marketers might run into? Are there any drawbacks in this space?
It's a higher cost per acquisition. It's an expensive place to be, because it is an evolving marketplace. It's an evolving infrastructure. Enabling you to target very small, targetable people that you really want to talk to, you're going to get highest ROI, is going to cost you an immense amount of money in some cases. We did a study this week, 10 times the cost per acquisition. And 10 times, when you're talking about a few $100s, that makes a difference as you roll up those numbers. It's good to have it in the mix, but be realistic. You're not going to get it cheap, because not everything is universal as far as addressability is specifically concerned. VOD, it's a smaller audience. You're talking about a broad audience, smaller audience. It's best to gear your message and what you intend to do towards the medium in that case. If you have a very specific message for a very specific group of people, a very specific creative, good to go with the micro audience. If you have a very broad branding message, you want to get your brand out there noticed, you want to get good feeling about it, you want to get more public interest in it, it's best to go with a broad audience. Because you don't necessarily know that the people that you're talking to may not be the people that are contributing most to your bottom line. We had a case, a certain shirt maker, You've probably seen their commercials. They only made shirts for men. Turned out that more than a quarter of the people responding to their ads were women. They weren't going after women. They weren't targeting women. They weren't advertising in places that were more female-oriented that we would traditionally think to go for a high-quality audience there. And it just so happened that we opened up their advertising eyes a little bit and said, you know, go a little bit further. Dig deeper into who is actually your client. You may not know who your client really is. You may have a core audience, but there may be a substantial amount of people at the fringes that you really didn't target, you just happen to capture because you were out there. One way to do that is linear. To get as much people in the bucket as possible and then figure out who they are.
Yeah.
Because don't take it for granted that who you're talking to or who you think you're talking to is who's talking back to you.
I feel like this gets back to the idea of like the ideal marketing mix. Yeah.
There is none.
And it's going to be different, you know, brand by brand, category by category. I mean, I will say this. I mean, obviously, it's just a different landscape now. You know, the OTT players, I mean, we all know Netflix and Amazon and Hulu, and now all the networks are going to be launching their own Disney Plus, and NBC is doing an ad-supported streaming service. It is a new world out there, okay? And I think it's a new world for, you know, how you can kind of, you know, for viewers in terms of their control that they have, in terms of what they watch. It's a new world in terms of how the network and content owners reach these people. But I'll tell you, the one thing, and you heard this loud and clear at the upfronts this week, we do a lot of work in this space too. The one thing that will never be taken away from linear TV, I don't say never, but it's hard to see it, is the power of like live programming.
Yep.
Live sports. There's nothing like, you know, that is not going to be, you know, those are people watching together. It's never going to be recorded or rarely going to be recorded. It's people together in bars and restaurants. It's a different experience. And what we see in our data is there's a certain level of engagement that exists within that experience. So not only are you reaching people in one place at one time, but each individual, their level of engagement with both the shows and the ads within those shows is absolutely elevated compared to regular TV. So that's something, you know, that I don't think is going to change so quick.
Yeah, and I think what the right marketing mix should be is really complicated and it's really hard to define. But again, like, don't lose sight of the foundation. Buying that broad reach with linear television, and then all these other things like OTT, programmatic, addressable, whatever it may be, should be additional layers to drive incremental reach, but you shouldn't shift everything over to that side just because it's the shiny new object. You need to make sure that you don't lose the core foundation. So it's about finding the right balance, both from measurement side, make sure that you're hitting all the funnel, and also from an eCPM standpoint, as Mark was alluding to before, to make sure you're balancing that out.
Yeah, I think it's important when you go into those new media to understand what kind of data you're going to get back from it. Data is really, we can't stress enough, data is, even though we work in data, data is the most important return that you're going to get. It's almost primary in some cases to the sales. You really want to know what your data partners can offer you and bring to the table to understand, and who you engage with to understand exactly what's happening. There's so many data points that you haven't even thought about that you can get to. Dwell time, you know, things that people really didn't use as metrics before. Stickiness on your site, you know, drop-off rates of this, that. I've seen KPIs all over the place. It's good to keep good sense as to what kind of data you're getting back. That's my advice.
All right, and then I think we have time for one more question before we open it up to everybody else. But a year or two from now, after the next upfronts, what do you think we'll be talking about? What'll have changed? What'll be the next buzzword? What do you guys think?
I think that we are coming together as an industry, and there's going to be less lines between television and digital. I think people are going to start more talking about video as a whole, but I think there's a lot that needs to be done in order to get there, both from a technology standpoint and the industry coming together to define what the new currency should be. But I think maybe not in 1 to 2 years, but probably in 3 to 5 years, we'll be talking just about video as opposed to TV and digital, because to the consumer, it's all the same.
I think it's funny. I mean, I think that question gets asked every single year, and the answer is always, at least for the last like 20 years, very similar. It's a great new world out there. I was telling these guys before, I worked for an addressable advertising technology company about 18 years ago, and I said, this company's about 5 years away from the marketplace really being ready for addressable advertising in TV. And I still feel like the marketplace is still kind of 5 years away. Yeah, I think we're going to be talking about this. I think this is like steering a cruise ship a bit, although maybe steering a little bit faster than it has in the past. It's about giving consumers control, and it's about, I do think you're going to see more of the currencies evolving, selling beyond age, sex, demos, to a lot of the things that we've talked about here. I think that's going to be the bigger things that you're going to sell. Because let's face it, there's so much programming out there. Even if you look at the networks now, there's so much great programming that at the end of the day, it's like, why are you buying this show versus another show? I mean, or this network or this platform versus another watching. And a lot of the great programming isn't even ad supported. Let's face it. So I do think for the guys that are ad supported, it's this move towards evolving the currencies and the metrics by which they transact is going to continue to move down the path that we talked about.
I'd only add one part to it. I mean, I agree with all that. I think you're going to talk about different ad formats coming up. We've seen 6-second ads be viewed. They've always been around in some case, a bumper to news and things like that. Reused a lot more. People are going to be more conscious of the content of their ads. We've seen shoppable TV be shopped out. It's not a new thing either. They tried that in 1990. People were very, very stressed about their personal information getting out. It's a little bit different now. If you ever want to look at an interesting case study on YouTube, there's something called a QCAT. I don't know if anybody ever saw this, but Forbes and Wired put this out in conjunction with Radio Shack. It sunk Radio Shack. It was actually an audio cue also. It was just a code scanner, but you could cue audio to get your PC to bring up a web page on a video ad. Sunk dramatically. Now we're talking about aiming your cell phone at a QR code on the TV. Same thing. Okay, how is this different now? Society's moved on a bit. So I think people are more accepting of giving up a little bit of their private information to get more convenience. Sad fact. I mean, it's just the way it is. Again, it bumps up against some personal privacy issues, but I think you're going to find people being very, very innovative with types of new ads and ad content that's coming out. Cohesive ad strategy doesn't necessarily mean having the same ad on 18 different mediums. It could mean that there's a variant of that ad that speaks to a specific audience at a specific time. That's a little bit different here and there. You're talking about witnessing ad capping.
Yeah.
Not showing somebody the ad 80 million times, that's a good thing. You don't want to show them the same message 18 million times. You want to keep your investment low enough so that you have an optimal amount of frequency and reach to get to these people. It's always been a strange balance where now everybody had in agencies, they had just generally a formula to do reach and frequency, or they ran it through certain systems that were homegrown. Now it can be for specific ads and specific creative, what the reach and frequency could be for that. What can it be in this media mix? What am I looking reach and frequency for this schedule versus that schedule? It's getting a lot deeper with all this rich data and knowing how to artfully put it together.
Great. Well, thank you, everybody. And now I guess we'll load up to all of you fine people if there are any questions out there.
Yeah, I bet. Thank you. You talked about the codifying the metrics, and I heard the digital first approach from like assume ComScore and Nielsen doing maybe a TV first approach. Is there going to be a marriage in the middle? Is the consumer expecting? Is the consumer expectation I get a TV ad, but it's TV quality ad, but it's on this device? And the reason why I'm asking is because I feel like I heard a little bit about branding and versus direct marketing, and we're a crowd that loves targeting. And maybe is some of the early adopters, are they brand advertisers? Are they direct marketing advertisers? Are they a healthy mix of both? Maybe you can speak to that a little bit.
I think the DTC customers are more apt to adopt new technology than traditional advertisers. Traditional advertisers have the more money, but the DTC people they're not jaded by, well, we had this much in TV, we got to do it again, we got to up our budget, we're going to down our budget. They're jumping into it and they're testing. They're used to more data. When you're talking about quality scores for specific sizes of ads, that's something that's always been talked about. Nobody's really come to an apt conclusion. We've heard of eye tracking studies. They actually track where your iris and everything are focused. It's very laboratory intensive. People with thought wheels, how you feel good or bad about an ad, done in LA. We have ways of doing that better now. Is a ad delivered by a specific medium better at delivering other audiences? We have data that would show if it works brand by brand. I don't think that there's any standard for it. Like you should, there'll be sales standards. You get this much for an ad delivered on this side of the screen versus something else. But people are still coming to grips with it because there's so many different ways, methods, and audience segments. There's always a price on something.
I think it's also about the context relative to the content that someone's watching, no matter if it's on YouTube or television, whatever it may be, especially on YouTube. Though if they're getting an ad that's completely irrelevant to the content that they're watching, it might be more jarring than the quality of the creative.
So Scott's point about the power of live TV, I'm just saying, in working in college sports, schools want to stream every single team, every single game now. And what was really noticeable is the guy in my office was watching his daughter's lacrosse game in his office on his mobile phone. Is that just further, the technology is allowing that kind of very local micro screening, but is that just fragmenting the broad market for advertisers?
There's two parts. I don't think it's fragmenting the audience because I think people can consume a lot of different types of sports in particular. And I don't think that, listen, the NFL, NBA basketball, big time college football, those are getting huge target audiences. I don't think those are going to be fragmented by more localized sports. But, clearly technology, it used to be you try to watch these things and you'd wait forever for it to load, and then it would be choppy, you couldn't watch it, or too many people would overload the system. It's clear now when you watch things, like technology has really caught up where it makes it so much easier to watch and digest whatever you want to. But I don't see that necessarily compromising the audiences of larger sports necessarily, because I think they're sort of apples and oranges a bit.
Sure. I think there's a part to that also. It gives smaller budget advertisers an ability to have a space and have very specific advertising in there. It's not that your GMs of the world are going to be going to local lacrosse or softball games, but you give the opportunity for entrance of smaller players to get in the market. And there's a lot of money there. If you look at local advertising versus national advertising, there's a big gulf in the amount of money and the ability. I believe that any advertiser would be very, very wrong in not paying attention to trimming their local advertising and using local outlets to their best ability. If you think you're getting everybody that you want nationally, you may be, but you're going to get more precise advertising if you go local. It's going to cost a little more, take more work, but it's worth it.
And to stay on this live events, live sports beat, they're highly engaged audiences. We didn't really talk about programmatic too much, but does advanced TV programmatic change how you can buy into that? Because these are such highly engaged audiences, you really want to be there with advanced TV. Does it change how you can buy into that audience?
That's your call.
I think as content shifts to other platforms where there's a lot more opportunities for programmatic, probably yes.
I don't think it's any different than any other, again, addressable can mean multiple things. It could mean targeting, delivering a different version of an ad or different ads to different individuals at the same time, based on profile. I guess whether that's sports or entertainment, I don't think it really matters. And then there's the addressable, which is kind of how I talked about it before, which again, I'm not seeing as much in sports, just because I think it's maybe a little too expensive, but which is, again, profiling different audiences based on what they watch. Like, I'm seeing more of the addressable piece like I talked about before, more in the general entertainment space, because there's just a lot more differences in terms of types of profiles across different programs versus if you're buying football, you're buying football, so I don't think that's going to be sold the same way by the networks in terms of a national broadcast network, their ability to target different ads necessarily. I think on a local level, through the stuff Melissa does, I think that may exist, but I don't think the networks themselves are doing the type of addressable stuff in sports, just because I don't see there's not enough variation in terms of the people watching. It's pretty concentrated. When you buy NFL, you have a pretty good idea of who you're getting.
We had the question somewhere.
A question around third-party data. It might be more appropriate to you, Alyssa, I'm not sure, but how important are third-party data providers? Can you give us an idea of what your team, if they're exploring other data avenues, does your team just go on LiveRamp and start looking at buckets of data, or do you request custom audience segments based on specific parameters?
Yeah.
How does
Yeah, I
that
think
work
it's
in
a
your
little
world?
mix of everything that you just touched on, but I think third-party data is really important, and we're doing a lot of work to layer that on top of our first-party data, because we know about viewership, and when we can layer that segmentation, whether it be LiveRamp, any partners that they're working with, Experian, Polk data for auto, whatever it may be,
Right.
so that we can better say, not only do we know people in this geography are watching these types of networks, but these auto intenders are watching it differently. So how do you best use those third-party segments to better reach your audience, and then how do you measure that on the back end and make sure that you're delivering?
But your team must be researching hundreds of different campaigns at any one time, right? I mean,
Yep. So there's a lot of data in there. I mean, we have ways that we've built in, automated capabilities to ingest
Right.
that, so it's not all manual.
okay.
But we have really awesome tools that allow us to look up all that information.
So if I understand you correctly, what you're telling me that now and in the future, third-party data will continue to play a pretty important.
Yeah, I think third-party data, and we're also exploring BYOD, bring your own data directly from advertisers.
Okay, I got a chortle over here.
That's someone walking with their bottle of wine.
So how do we make sure that the third-party data that we're bringing in, there's a lot of value, but also we can upload CRM data, whatever it may be, so that we're working with the client's direct data on top of what our first-party data is and bringing that all together.
Okay, thanks.
Hi. So perfect transition. You talked a little bit about your teams. Would you talk about your talent landscape, what that looks like, and how you're finding the talent that you need as this world shifts?
It's a great question. I could start. It's hard. It's tough. No, it really is. I mean, it's hard. We're a startup company, so just getting the infrastructure, just getting it in place to actually search in the right way. That's not just opportunistic. And who do you know? And you find a lot of good people that way. At a company that is very that relies on data science and engineering, that's hard in and of itself. It's hard, but we're finding big challenges in the area of diversity, right? Trying to find women, we're hungry for more diversity and finding people that aren't cut from the same cloth in terms of data science and engineering, and are actively searching for those people, and that's hard. I'll say this, in terms of hiring, the type of profile, like, we're in a service business, whether it's you're dealing with a brand or you're dealing with a TV network, and people are asked to wear a lot of hats. I always like to say, I want left and right brain thinkers, and I want to empower people. So I'm looking for people that I can hire that not only have the chops to work with data and tell stories for clients, but also have a bit of a commercial mindset. You can't just be an analyst, as I feel, and just working behind the scenes and then hand off your report to some salesperson or account manager to go out and deliver it. That's highly inefficient and it doesn't work. So what we look for and try to hire, and it's hard because a little bit of that unicorn thing, is finding people who have both the analytic chops, the storytelling chops, and also the drive and desire. They don't have to have done it. I'll hire people out of college if they prove that they really love dealing with clients and want to get out there, want to be empowered. And then people come in, they're young, and say, you're going to own the NBC Universal account. Knock yourself out. Day to day, it's yours. I got to go do all these other things. But I do think it's a challenge finding people. It's a challenge doing it cost effectively as well, and and not, I mean, the time it takes you to post something, you get a lot of resumes that just don't fit the bill, so you have to iterate on the job description and the title and things like that. I could talk for a long time about that because it's ongoing. Growing and building a business is a challenge.
I think we could all keep talking, but I think we've done enough for today, so thank you, panel. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks so much again to our panel, and thanks to all of you for joining us today. We'll see you next time.